You're now listening to All Hog Sports, covering all Arkansas Razorback sports, such as football, basketball, baseball, and much more. Now, here's your host for today's show, Sam Stimpson.
Now, Arkansas did not come out of Florida with a win as expected. They lost 63-35 to the Gators, who had a very impressive game. I'll get into that, though, with today's special guest, the Robson Sportscast here. And basically, in my opinion, this was a repeat of the Texas A&M game for Arkansas. We're going to get into the key takeaways, things for Arkansas and Florida, and then grade both of those teams. But first, if you like what you're hearing on today's show, make sure to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at All Hog Sports Pod. And please leave a 5-star review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. That would mean a lot to me and everyone involved with this show. But kicking it off with today's show, I'm going to let Alex Robson tell the people who you are and where they can find you and everything like that.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Alex Robson. I am the host of the Robson Sportscast. I am from Blacksburg, Virginia, known as Hokie Town to many of you college football fans, but I stand as a Florida Gators fan, have for almost my entire sporting life. Been doing the podcast for maybe a few months now, but my goal is, of course, to go to college and eventually get a degree in sports journalism here at a local university at Radford University, much smaller than Virginia Tech, because I can't handle absolutely massive universities like that. I'm just overwhelmed driving by it. But yeah, that's basically all I got to say, man. That's all I got to say about me.
Alrighty. So obviously you're a Florida Gators fan, and they've been really good this year. And Kyle Trask has been the talk of everything. Now, obviously, we'll talk about the offense here in a second, but I just want to put like a key emphasis on how good Trask and like that whole entire Gators offense was. I really didn't know that until they played Georgia, and then I was like, Georgia has a good defense, and they just went crazy against them. And then I'm like, yeah, Arkansas's defense it's all right, but I was like, Florida's going to go nuts and score like, I said 4 touchdowns and 2 field goals, but the scoreboard said 63. So, when you look at this Florida offense, what do you think is like the main point of all of the success?
You just got to go to Dan Mullen. I mean, this dude's a quarterback whisperer. You and I talked about that when the game was finishing up. Dan Mullen's just an amazing coach of offense, and that's what Florida has really been lacking ever since Tim Tebow and Urban Meyer left the program. They've had guys come in. They've had guys like Will Muschamp. They've had Jim McElwain. Both of them failed to really do anything special with the offense, and that is what's been lacking for so many years. They could not just get the offense right, but the defense was always there. Dan Mullen comes in, that changes everything. And Kyle Trask has taken the Joe Burrow leap in his second year starting. He has now more touchdown passes than he did in the entirety of last season. Kyle Trask is just unbelievable. He's not as mobile as a guy that would usually fit in Dan Mullen's system, but he makes up for it with how poised he is in the pocket and how great he delivers a football. He just puts it in perfect places every single time. Watching him play, I just get Danny Warfel vibes every single time. And now we're talking about a Gator legend when I mention Danny Warfel. And I really think a lot of this success has to lean on not only Kyle Trask, but the job Dan Mullen has done in Gainesville.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you look at Dan Mullen's past with Mississippi State and how he was good with Dak Prescott, and you look at Dak Prescott and you can argue that he was top 5 NFL QB before he got hurt. His pass with Tim Tebow when he used to be with Florida, and then Alex Smith, who all three of those guys had a really good college career, and they eventually went into the NFL, and some of them, did better than others. But regardless of that, I obviously think Dan Mullen was a fabulous hire for them, and it makes it a little easier because you take them away from the SEC West because Arkansas has to play Mississippi State every single year, so I guess I'll appreciate that one. But the Arkansas offense, it looks good again. Only really thing I would stress on is the offensive line just wasn't good for us. Franks had 1.92 seconds in the pocket, and this is basically forcing him to go to his first read. Obviously, the Briles offense, if you don't know anything about it, it's kind of a lot of RPOs and things like that, so he kind of gets his first read, and he's like, okay, I have to throw it now because the offensive line wasn't giving it him enough time. However, I said on the show, a ton in the past episodes when I critiqued the offensive line, I'm not really scared about getting it there because I think Davis and Pittman have. Because if you look at some of the times where Arkansas had a really good running backs and things like that was when Sam Pittman was here under Coach Bielema. So I'm not really too concerned about that. It's going to take a while to get guys in the offseason. It's obviously harder when you don't have a full offseason due to COVID. You can't have guys working out in the weight room with like strength and conditioning coaches, obviously from after the camp would end and all. So I think this season is really interesting because of all of that. But I think a couple things, you can't really harp on like you normally would just because there hasn't been that off season.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just every team has its weaknesses, but they're just getting more exploited now because of the lack of an offseason with the coronavirus. I mean, coming into the year, Florida has always had a hyped up defense, and Todd Grantham is one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, but that defense has not been what it has used to be. Now, of course, Florida did lose a lot of defensive talent to the draft and graduation from last season. Jabari Zuniga, John Grenard, C.J. Henderson was the biggest one, a first-round pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. The defense lost a lot of guys, but it's not due to a lack of talent. I mean, Sean Davis, a great cover safety. Donovan Steiner's a lot like that. Kyer Elam, an emerging corner. Marco Wilson's a great man-to-man guy. The defensive presence is there, but just with the lack of an offseason, you can't really get physical with it. And that, I think, has really affected not only Florida, but I believe it's affected Arkansas too.
Yeah, I mean, I look at a lot of games this year for Arkansas, and it seems like running backs just could not get tackled by our defenders just because they weren't really tackling a ton. And those guys really necessarily aren't big. If you look at Arkansas's roster compared to other SEC teams, those guys are a lot smaller because Coach Chad Morris really didn't put much effort into the locker room, and he had this idea of sub 300-pound linemen, which I'll never understand, even though I'll say that a million times on the show.
Doesn't sound right.
No, it didn't work out well either. But Chad Morris just really never had like players at a position and had them big like that, so it's harder to tackle. Players are smaller for us, and it's affecting all the programs nationwide.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously you probably don't know much about this, but Rakeem Boyd was probably going to be like a top 5 NFL running back prospect this year out of Arkansas, and he went down with an ankle injury against Mississippi State, and he really hasn't looked the same since. I think Traylon Smith is actually the better back. I think Boyd's talent is undeniable, and I think he's more of a pro-style back. But the thing I really like from Traylon is he fits this fast-paced offense, and it seems like Boyd, he kind of waits to see for the hole to open and then rushes. Smith just kind of dives in and makes the best out of it, and the offense runs so much better with Smith, in my opinion. And obviously, he had that big touchdown for 83 yards, and out of that, it gave me kind of vibes of like Felix Jones, Raheem Mostert, other pro backs who are fast, they're quick, and they just kind of hammer it down the middle, and because of their quickness, they're able to get out faster. I think Boyd's still going to be a good NFL prospect, and he'll probably go late rounds into that. And I feel bad for him because he came back this year and he got injured and hasn't really taken the same role of the offense he would beforehand. But I think overall, Smith just has to be the starting back. I know you probably don't know much about this situation, but I just kind of wanted to talk about that. But however, I believe if Smith can't get it going, we have a good back in Boyd. So it's nice to have almost a double option there.
You also probably have a triple option because of Felipe Franks. What a lot of people discredit with Franks, coming from a Florida fan who watched him play, is how sneaky athletic this guy is. He's 6'6", 240, got a cannon of an arm, but when he gets in the open field, he's a tough guy to bring down. He's got speed, he's got strength, he's very athletic, and I think with that kind of three-headed monster Arkansas has right now, that offense has a lot of potential to be very, very dangerous.
Yeah, I agree with you. The offense has been a lot better this season. Obviously, when you don't have time to work out a couple kinks during the training, as I talked about earlier. But Franks has really impressed me this whole entire year, and it's so nice to have stable quarterbacks. Because if you don't know, Arkansas started at 5 quarterbacks in 12 games last year. There was never really a guy that I was like, all right, he's going to start this week, and this is what I expect. it was always, this may happen or this may happen. So I think getting Franks into this program has been really beneficial, and it's almost kickstarted a rebuild because Arkansas obviously went 2-10 back-to-back years, no SEC wins, and I really wasn't expecting us to get more than 1-2 this year. I thought it was going to take a while to rebuild this program, but Franks has one of the biggest roles into almost like jump-starting the rebuild of this program, and I really appreciate that. And what I saw from him is he looked really good when he gets time in the pocket, but we really don't have that because our offensive line isn't too good. I mean, you look at Frank's 78.9% completion percentage on the game with 250 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. And what I really like from him, though, is he is not throwing any interceptable passes. When he gets in situations where the pocket's collapsing on him, he either throws it away, throws a check down, or like you said, because he's a really athletic guy, he sneaks around and takes it up for anywhere from like 1 to really 10 yards because he's able to get there. And I think teams, don't credit him for his ability there.
Yeah, and that's the big thing because you see such a massive human being that Felipe Franks is, 6'6", 240, like I just mentioned. But this guy is a very mobile guy, very capable of being that guy. And as you mentioned with the interception things, that was kind of always his issue at Florida when he was still young and growing with Dan Mullen. Dan Mullen tried to refine that, but Franks would still make some pretty wayward decisions at times where he would throw the football. He is now, as a senior, has pulled that back a little bit, become more in himself, and has really evolved into a guy that I think can lead, really jumpstart the program into that rebuild like you've mentioned.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. Obviously, having a stable quarterback is the backbone of any successful college football program. Franks has provided that for Arkansas, and I don't think any Arkansas fan is really upset with how he's been doing this year. And it's really good to have a quarterback like him who is really improving his draft stock. I mean, he kind of made it known from the day he came here that he was just trying to play 1 year, go to the NFL. But obviously you get that 6th year of eligibility no matter what, because technically he was eligible for a medical redshirt if he wanted to, because I think he got injured his freshman year at practice and he redshirted. However, he could have got a medical redshirt and came back for a 6th year, but obviously COVID gives the players another year on top of that. So I think a topic later is, will he go to the draft? I think so. He's kind of made that clear since he's been here all in all. And then also his talent and his stock has definitely gone up at Arkansas, and having a pretty good wide receiver core has helped him out. Not that Arkansas wide receivers have ever been bad. I'm just saying this because a lot of people don't credit these guys on our team. Like Mike Woods had a fantastic game. 2 catches, 129 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 82-yard touchdown, 47-yard touchdown, 2 catches. And he put on the wheels, was super quick, and I don't think he really gets enough credit for what he does because Burks gets in a lot of situations where he's locked up. He's obviously the better wide receiver on this team as he's had a couple fantastic catches that have been SportsCenter top 10 plays.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people discredit Arkansas primarily because of the division they play in. When you think of that SEC West, you think of the guys like Alabama, of course. You think of LSU. For this year, you're thinking Texas A&M, too, because they are on fire right now. But I think Arkansas, in terms of the future, has a really good chance, from what I am seeing so far, of possibly returning to its old self back when guys like Darren McFadden were coming through. This team has laid the groundwork for the rebuild. It is just now a factor of getting the recruits in that Sam Pittman wants and building this roster up. Because if you want to compete with those big boys, Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, you're going to have to continue to do that rebuild.
Yeah, I agree 100%. A lot of these players aren't really the guys that Pittman would want to have, but he's working with them. He's never came into the program and said, oh, the reason we lost this game is because the players don't fit my system. He has never discredited a single player, which Chad Morris did a ton, and I really despise that because he was like, oh, I don't have my players. It hasn't been enough. You have your players. You just don't know how to use them. So it's really nice to see a lot of young players really in this program who weren't playing anything under Chad Morris, like Jalen Catalan, we'll talk about him later, but Burks and Woods and all of these guys making a difference in the program. Obviously, though, a really big thing for Arkansas' wide receiver is De'Vion Warren. On a kickoff return, he took it out of the end zone and tore his ACL on that play. He'll be out for the season, and I hope for him to have a healthy and speedy